Hi, how's it going? Sorry to cut that last one short. That was absolutely fascinating though, by the way. My name is Tara. I work for Birdwatch Ireland as the Urban Birds Project Officer. And this year we did a survey with Fingal County Council looking at the number of swifts nesting right across Fingal. So I'm here to talk to you about the results of that survey, but also to talk to you about getting involved with swifts, about getting involved with swifts at the tidy towns level, if you're not already involved. And I know there's going to be a lot of people are going to see their faces in this presentation as you go through, because a lot of people in this room have already helped us out with the survey and are already doing fantastic work for swifts right across Fingal. So yeah, Fingal was a lovely one to survey just because of the huge growth for swifts in the county. Sorry, how do I click across? Thanks, Julian. So this is a swift, the top right-hand picture there, that's a swift. It's a small bird, weighs about 40 grams, about the same as a Cadbury's cream egg. It is, despite its small size, it does an epic migration every year. So the swifts that were here in Lusk this season, they're now in Africa. So they're down probably around the Congo Basin, because that's one of the main places that they hang out during the non-breeding season. They arrive to our shores in late April, early May, and they head off again in August. They have one of the shortest seasons in Ireland of all of our migratory species. The cuckoo just beats them by a bit. The reason that they hang out in the Congo Basin during the non-breeding season is that the Congo Basin is a tropical rainforest. So what better place to be if you feed on insects than a rainforest full of insects, full of bugs for you to eat. And then they're basically coming to our shores to chase the light and chase the kind of, because up here they have longer periods of light during the day and they can feed for longer periods of time, which means that they can feed their chicks for a long period of time and raise more chicks that way. The swift, like I said, it's an insectivore. The bottom left-hand corner, that really kind of ugly looking thing, that is called a bolus. So it's just a big ball of insects. During the non-breeding season, right now, the swifts are off and they're just eating insects as they find them. They're not worried about collecting them. But during the breeding season, when they have chicks to look after, they have to find a way of transporting those insects back to the nest in a very, very energy efficient manner. So what they do is, as they're flying around, they grab an insect, they tamp it back to the back of their throat, and they keep doing that, gluing them together with saliva until they create this big ball in their throat. And if they fly low enough beside you, you can often see it just sitting in their throat. Sometimes what happens is they come to those tiny little nest sites, bottom left-hand corner there, you can see that's a nest there. They try and get in with this big ball in their throat. They can't get into that tiny, tiny narrow gap. They have to drop the bolus, start all over again. They nest in buildings, so you can see that swift there, that's an adult swift poking its head out of the nest site. I don't know if you can see it there. But yeah, they nest in our buildings. Traditionally, they would have nested in old growth forest, in caves, and there is actually a record of swifts nesting in a cave in Sligo from 2019, so it seems there may still be a remnant population nesting in more natural, quote unquote, nesting habitat. But over the millennia, they have evolved alongside us to nest in our buildings, which has been worked really, really well for them over the millennia. Unfortunately, the last number of years, it's not working out quite as well. But hopefully, with tidy towns and other groups, we can sort of start to help them out with that. They're incredibly site faithful as well. So they're a bird that wants to come back to the exact same nest site year after year, which is one of the factors that's really impacting them as well. We'll come to that later on. They're relatively long-lived birds, so we have records of them living about 20 plus years. And long-lived birds tend to start breeding a little bit later. So swifts, they start to breed at about 3 to 5 years of age. They jump out of that nest that you can see in the bottom corner there at 6 weeks of age, and they don't touch land again. They stay in continuous flight until they're 3 to 5 years of age and they start to breed themselves. So from 6 weeks until about 3 years, they're just flying continuously, which is absolutely incredible. So they'll feed on the wing, they'll sleep on the wing, they'll drink on the wing. When they're ready for it, they mate on the wing and they collect nesting material on the wing as well. And to do all of this, to stay in the air as long as they do, they obviously have to be incredibly well evolved. So they are an incredibly streamlined, very aerodynamic species. You can see the swift there has this very distinctive shape. These sickle-shaped wings, cigar-shaped body. Its head is like down really, really kind of in among its shoulders. its recessed eyes, and even its legs are further back on its body than would generally be the case on birds, and they're shorter. So when a swift is on the ground, it's like it's walking on its elbows. It's very funny looking. But everything about it is evolved and adapted to be on the wing. They don't want to be on the ground. There you go. Unfortunately, the swift has undergone a pretty significant decline in the last number of years. So the Countryside Bird Survey, which is coordinated by Birdwatch Ireland and funded by the National Parks and Wildlife Services, has recorded a 69% decline in swifts between 1998 and 2023. So that means that in 25 years, we've lost 69% of our population, which if we keep going in that direction, we'll lose them within a decade or so. And this has landed the swift on the Birds of Conservation Concern in Ireland red list. So they're there alongside species like the kestrel that you can see there, curlew, corncrake, barn owl, not a list that you want to be on. It means that they are very much in danger of extinction. There are several factors that are impacting swifts. We know that the loss of breeding sites is impacting swifts to quite an extraordinary degree. Basically, swifts are getting renovated out of their nest sites. And this is happening at a much faster pace because we have much more money. We're renovating our houses to a much higher standard. And on top of that, when they get renovated out of their nest sites, there's no real new nesting habitat coming on the market for swifts. So houses are built and buildings are built to a much higher standard than they would have been years ago, which means that there's no gaps, no cracks, no gaps underneath roof tiles for swifts to nest in. Really, really good from an energy efficiency point of view, from a climate change point of view, absolutely brilliant. From a biodiversity point of view, it's pretty bleak, to be honest. So swifts are kind of getting hit with a double whammy of losing their existing nesting habitat and no new nesting habitat coming on the market, which means, like us, they're facing a housing crisis. There's also been a decline in insect populations. So in Germany, there was an amazing study carried out over a 27-year period, looking at insect populations in protected sites, so sites that have low levels of pesticide use, low levels of herbicide use, right across the country. Over that 27-year period in those protected sites, they found insect declines of up to 76%, which means that if they are experiencing declines of insect populations on that level and at that scale, then we probably are as well, because we have relatively similar agricultural systems. The National Biodiversity Data Centre has also been keeping track of certain species like your butterflies, bees, etc., and they're noting declines as well. But even just anecdotally, when I was a child in the late 90s, I'd get into the car with my parents, obviously, and you'd go for a drive just down to the shop and the windshield would be splattered. And now, if you drive the length and breadth of the country and you hit 3 moths, it's notable. So we do know that insect populations are declining, and obviously if you've got a bird or a species that depends on insects for food and those insects are disappearing, it's going to have an impact. To top it all off, we know that climate change is probably having an impact on swifts as well, and other sub-Saharan migratory species, so species that are coming from south of the Sahara. So that'd be species like your sand martin, your swallow, cuckoo, house martin, and swift. There's also a really good study has come out of the UK that noted that climate-associated factors, so factors associated with climate change, seem to be driving declines in first-year swifts. Basically just means that first-year birds, less first-year birds are surviving now than they were previously, and that's because that's driven largely by climate change. Okay, so that's all pretty gloomy, but there is actually hope for swifts. Unlike species like curlew or corncrake or it's quite easy to try and kind of provide them with breeding habitat. We don't need to make wide-scale changes for breeding habitat specifically. And we know that they take very well to nest boxes and to nest bricks, so that's incredibly hopeful. The All-Ireland Pollinator Plan, which is implemented by a lot of Tidy Towns groups, will have a positive impact on this insectivorous species, because obviously the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan is kind of implemented to boost insect populations. Although we do need a wider discussion and wider policy changes around agriculture and herbicide and pesticide use if we're really going to tackle kind of insect declines. There are also an awful lot of conservation organisations right across the island working for swifts. There's Birdwatch Ireland, the RSPB Northern Ireland, there's Swift Conservation Ireland, the Dublin Swift Group, Northern Ireland Swift Group, and then there's a lot of tidy towns groups as well that are working really, really hard for swifts. And what's really heartening is that the Tidy Towns competition is specifically pushing conservation measures for swifts, which is really, really heartening and really great for the swift. So there is an awful lot of work going on for swifts, and there is an awful lot of hope for this species. We just need to take it by the horns and just make a difference for them. So one of the things that we've been doing in Birdwatch Ireland over the last number of years, and doing really well, I think, is monitoring surveys of swifts across the country. Basically, if you want to protect something, you need to know how much of it you have and where they are. So we have carried out 25 surveys since 2017, with 2 of those being resurveys. Speaking of hope for swifts, in Offaly we did a resurvey there in 2023, and the swift population held firm between 2017 and 2023. We did a resurvey of Meath in 2024, and its population went up. So it went up from 260 swift nests in 2019 to 386 in 2024. Some of that is probably because it's easier to find the swifts the second time when you know where to look, but some of it does seem to be natural population growth as well. So that's really, really hopeful. We don't really know why they're doing so well in Meath compared to the places, and we need to do a lot more resurvey work to kind of figure that out. This year, like I was saying, we did a survey for Fingal, and I'm just going to talk a wee bit about the results of that now. So Fingal County Council asked us to survey 14 towns and villages across the county, and we found 55 swift nests across those, in 10 of those towns and villages. Balbriggan and Blanchardstown, they came out top. So there's 16 nests in Balbriggan and 12 nests in Blanchardstown and Castleknock. And around approximately 95% of all of the nests that we recorded were in residential buildings, so in privately owned properties. Ideally, what we want is the swift nests to be found in public, religious or heritage buildings, because those buildings don't tend to get renovated as frequently, and they don't tend to be sold as frequently, and there's a lot more people keeping an eye on those buildings and advocating for swifts if they know that there's renovations happening in a building, a publicly owned building that has swifts in it. Whereas if it's John next door and his house is being renovated and you know he has swifts in it, you're less likely to speak up because it's a private property. So we want them to be in this publicly owned space. So having such a high proportion of your swifts in residential buildings, privately owned buildings, having such a low number of swift nests across the county, and they were quite scattered as well, means that the Fingal swift population is in dire straits. It needs an awful lot of work to kind of protect it. However, just not to hammer the point home, but just to just to compare, Fingal is kind of second last in terms of the number of swift nests that we found over the survey period. No, Fingal are the third in Dublin. Oh. So yeah, but you're very similar to South Dublin, which tells us something. But it's not all doom and gloom. There are few surveys that we have done where we have found so much community support for swifts. We had 23 swift nest box projects to survey that were already in place long before we ever came along. There's a nest camera project in Lusk, which is really class. There were swift monitoring projects pre-existing this project. So Balbriggan Bird Club was set up specifically to monitor swifts in Balbriggan, so I understand. And also Skerries, the Birdwatch Ireland branch in Skerries, they had been monitoring the swift population there. And that actually came in incredibly handy because the library was renovated and swifts had been in the library. Fortunately, that swift colony was lost, but they worked with Fingal County Council to put in swift bricks into the new library building and the swift nest boxes. And there were swifts prospecting, so looking at that site, so I understand, this year. So hopefully that'll kind of bring swifts back to Skerries. They do have 2 nests that still exist, but hopefully that'll grow the population then as well. So having these monitoring projects in place and monitor them year on year, which Tidy Town projects, it could be a Tidy Towns project if you so wanted, is really, really important for swifts. So I thought I would talk a little bit about the nest boxes themselves and how exactly you would place a nest box. So this is a single cavity, flat roofed nest box. It has an egg cup inside it. And the reason that there is an egg cup inside it is, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna hold it. The reason that there's an egg cup inside it is because when swifts are going around at the very beginning, they're collecting nesting material on the wing and they're just getting bits of straw, whatever they can find in the air. So their nest cup at the start is pretty paltry, which means that the eggs can roll really easily and they lose that clutch. But by putting the egg cup in it already, the swifts can lay their egg in that, the eggs won't roll as easily, and the pair will be more successful. It's actually a really nice project done by Swift Conservation Ireland, where they put up nest boxes with nest cups and without nest cups, and the swifts are choosing the ones with the egg cups. So good to pick, good just to keep in mind that if you're buying a box, just make sure it has the egg cup in it. The nest boxes that you can see in the top, I can never do left or right, top left-hand corner I think it is, with the sloped roof on them. Those are basically just to stop anything standing on top of them, like a corvid, crow, magpie, or a gull predating the nest. And then the one on the bottom is a flat roof one like this. And you get single cavities, like in the top picture, or you can get triple cavities, like in the bottom picture, or you can get a double one, which is just two of these stuck together. If you are getting Swift boxes, which I hope at the end of this you'll all be going out and getting Swift boxes, there's just a couple of things that you have to bear in mind when you're placing them. So the first thing that we look at when we're surveying buildings to see their suitability for Swift nest boxes is the height of the building. So the building has to be at least 5 meters high. You can get away with 4 meters, but 5 meters is what we generally recommend. And the reason for that is that when the swifts come out of the nest box, especially the chicks, they drop first before they get their kind of wings underneath them. If it's too low to the ground, they could drop, end up on the ground. And remember I was saying their legs are kind of back, they can't get themselves back up into the air, so they're really vulnerable then to predation. So 5 meters high is what you're looking for. You want them facing north, east or west, or a combination of those three. We recommend not placing them south facing because even in Ireland, you wouldn't think it, but even in Ireland, these boxes aren't that well insulated, so the chicks and the eggs can overheat on a really nice day. So north, east or west, or some combination is what we recommend. Don't put your nest box directly, have a nest box directly behind a tree. Swifts fly incredibly fast. So the fastest bird in vertical flight, they can reach speeds of over 110 kilometers per hour. When they're coming into these tiny, tiny little entrances, they're coming in at a pretty fast clip. If there's a tree in front of them, they'll have to skirt the tree and then go in. It just makes it harder for them to get in. Just put your nest box further away from the tree. Also, don't have anything directly below the nest entrance, like a flag or a light, anything like that. The last thing to think about is, or the second last thing to think about, is placing them under eaves. So you can see the bottom picture there, that nest box is under eaves. If you place it under an eave, it means that it's better protected from the weather, so rain and sun. But also, if you place it under the eave, you can use a flat roofed box, which is often a little bit cheaper. If you don't have eaves, don't worry about it, it's okay. You just use a slope roof box up there, which isn't an exorbitant price either. And the last thing to think about is just don't have lights on it. So the birds are often coming in very, very late at night as dusk is falling, and it could just dazzle them. Makes it sound much more complicated than it is. It's not. It's just height of 5 meters, north, east or west, no trees, nothing underneath, no lights. And you can find this infographic on our Saving Swifts guide. It's on the Birdwatch Ireland website. So the other thing that you're going to need is a collar system. And a collar system is just a speaker that plays the calls of swifts to attract prospecting birds to the nest boxes. This is essential. If you go to all the hassle of putting up nest boxes and you don't put this up, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Because when the birds are out, when those non-breeding birds that are looking for a nest site are out and about, they're not only watching for swifts to find the nest boxes, they're listening out for them. And particularly in areas where there's a really low concentration of swifts, like in Fingal, they need all the help they can get finding your nest boxes because they're not going to see enough birds flying around to follow them in. Does that make sense? So when they're flying about, they're listening out for those calls. And those birds that are listening out for calls, They are prospecting birds. They're called bangers. And the reason that we call them bangers is that they literally just bang up against a prospective nest site to see if it's occupied, so see if there's already a pair nesting in there, and if there's not a pair nesting in there, to see if it's suitable for them to nest in the following year. So I thought I'd just show you a video of swifts banging up against a prospective nest site. So the two at the very, so you see the nest box at the very end, just the one over to the other side, you'll see a bird banging up against that. This is the Art Centre in Carrick and Shannon. It had a swift colony in it already. Just to note, they put up nest boxes on a building that already had a swift colony. We wouldn't recommend that. So if you have a building in your local area that has swifts nesting in it, just put the nest boxes on a building beside it that doesn't have any swifts in it, because your nest box could end up blocking up holes that you're not aware of. Okay, so I'll show you the words. Oh, and listen out for the call as well. I hope this plays audio. Listen out for the call as well. That's the sound that the caller system will be playing. Hi. So not everybody likes that sound, but it does blend in with the background noise. We have swift boxes on our house, and when I stuck on the collar system there 2 years ago, my partner, who does not like birds, or not doesn't like birds, but has no interest in birds, he went, "Oh my God, that's the sound of summer." And he's not interested in birds, but he had picked it up over time, and it was associated with something really good. So even though it mightn't sound like the nicest sound just there, when it's in the kind of background of day-to-day life, it's actually quite pleasant and can bring up evocative memories for people. Okay, because the Tidy Towns Handbook specifically mentions surveying for swifts, and because surveying for swifts has already proven in Fingal to be very, very beneficial for this species, I thought I'd talk a little bit about how to survey for swifts. So you're looking at doing your survey between June and August. So like Kate was saying, all of our surveys really happen during the summer months as well. But you'll be looking at June to August. Start mid-June is what I would recommend. And you go, if you can't go the whole way to August, go at least until mid-July, because that's when the chicks have hatched and they're at their most active, and the parents are coming back and forth most frequently. So you'll catch them coming in and out of the nest sites more often. You want to be doing this in the mornings and evenings. If any of you are early birds and you want to get up really early, you can start as early as 6 o'clock. If you want to be nice to yourself, you can start about 8 or 9, and you carry on until midday. The swifts aren't going to be around you the midday really, so you knock off then, and you carry on then in the evening. So some people say to start at 7, don't bother, start at 8. That's when they really start getting active, I think. And then carry on until dusk, and it's really that hour before dusk that's crucial. That's when they're coming into those nest sites hard and fast, so that's when you want to be there. The kind of best practice is to stand at each building for 30 minutes in good weather and up to 2 hours in not so great weather. That's not always possible, but just do your best and bear that in mind, that if you don't stay there for that length of time, twice over the survey period, you might miss them. You also want calm, warm weather. Since swifts are insectivores, they're hunting insects. Insects are out in warmer, calmer weather, so the swifts will be out in more abundance then. When you are going about doing your surveys, listen for the swifts and watch out for swifts screaming at roof height, like you saw in the video, and that'll alert you to where the nests potentially are. Take a photo then when you do see a swift disappearing into a nest entrance. So you can see up in the top corner there with the big circle, that's a swift entering a nest site. I have never seen anybody capture a swift actually entering a nest site in one of these, but Belle, the surveyor for swifts this year, did. So you take a photograph of where you think the nest entrance is, and then you can mark it on the photograph, then go onto the National Biodiversity Data Centre website and enter your record there. They have a landing page specifically for swifts. Those records really help us to kind of coordinate these surveys, and they're also good just nationally to have a record of these things. If you are still on the fence about swifts and about kind of incorporating them into local biodiversity action plan, I thought I'd give it one last pitch. They tick an awful lot of boxes in the Tidy Towns Handbook. They're one of the few species that are specifically mentioned in the Tidy Towns Handbook under the biodiversity section. Swallows are also get a mention there as well. There are several actions that are mentioned specifically for swifts, which include nest box projects, which are happening already across Fingal, and surveying, which again is happening in some towns in Fingal and hopefully will happen in more towns as well. By carrying out nest box projects and carrying out survey and monitoring projects, you also demonstrate to the adjudicators that you're aware of the habitats and species in your local town, which is great. They're also Swift projects are also an excellent means of demonstrating local awareness of swifts to adjudicators through school nest box projects, through social media and through events. So getting those schools involved through green schools, Swift nest box projects can all occur through tidy towns as well. They're really relatively simple and low cost measures. This box here, I think retails at about €60. Well, it's not free, but it is relatively low cost, and it can be funded through different grants as well. And to top it all off, not only are you potentially getting points from a biodiversity point of view for tidy towns, you're also helping a nationally declining species that's threatened with extinction. So it's pretty much a win-win. And we know that collectively, if all tidy towns groups or many tidy towns groups are carrying out these projects, these swift nest conservation projects, for swifts, that it can potentially make a real difference for swifts and for their breeding habitat. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening.